pleasant good morning to Dr. Colwick Wilson. Dr. Wilson, good morning, and welcome to Victorious Lifestyle.
Good morning, Pastor Brown, and I'm excited to be here with you and your listeners this morning.
You're not as half as excited as I am. Trust me. You just cannot do it, even if you try.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I'm excited about that feature too. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I know your listeners are in for a treat.
Yeah. This morning, Dr. Williams, you are on Victorious Lifestyle, which is a very popular program in and out of the church. And I'm just happy to have you here. When I heard that you could have made it, it buoyed me up. I always see, and being a sociologist also, I would come across these writings with Dr. Williams, and then they would say he's a Caribbean man, and then more so they say he been to my alma mater, and it just thrilled me. And to have you here this morning in the flesh, it's just a beautiful feeling that I'm having. So I'm trying to give you as much time as possible. Now, for those who don't know, I just want to do a quick profile of Dr. Williams before I bring him in. I want folks to know why I'm this thrilled, because Dr. Williams is currently the Norman Professor of Public Health and the chair in the Department of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. He's also a professor of African and African American Studies and Sociology at Harvard University. Previously, he was a professor at Yale University for 6 years and the University of Michigan for 14. He's an example, and I say this with pride this morning, he's an example of the enduring value of Seventh-day Adventist education. He received his early school in St. Lucia. After teaching at the St. Lucia SD Academy, he earned a Bachelor of Theology from the Caribbean Union Colleges, now USC, and an MD from Andrews University and an MPH from Loma Linda University. He received his PhD in sociology from the University of Michigan. Now, if I should continue to speak about Dr. Williams this morning, we'll run out of time. And that will not be fair to him at all. Dr. Williams, again, what do you have to say before we begin?
Well, let me say good morning, and it's an honor and privilege to join you today and to join your listeners today. And I think every new day is a day that God has made, so we can rejoice and be glad in it. It's really an honor to be here with you and here in Trinidad today, and to talk to you and to your listeners.
Dr. Williams, let me get to the crunch of the matter. What could cause you doing sociology with Foucault, Marx, and Gibbons and these guys, and still be focused on Christianity?
That is a good question. I think a lot of how we make sense of life is what are the assumptions that we bring to bear in terms of interpreting perspectives and interpreting evidence that is out there. So I don't see a conflict between faith and science. I think of God as the greatest scientist in the universe. And I say this to people when I've talked to them about COVID-19 vaccines, for example. Science rightly understood does not conflict with the word of God, because God is the greatest scientist. You know, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made. I mean, that's a lot of science that took place there that we don't even fully understand. So I don't see an inherent conflict. I think depends on assumptions people bring. They sometimes see a conflict, but I see God as a great scientist. And I think that both science, rightly understood, and the word of God speak to the same source and point us to the wisdom that exists in God and of the beauty that lies ahead for us in our lives personally, in our lives professionally, if we follow God.
As a young man growing up and things within the settings of the church, how did you see this whole idea of church schooling being in a Christian environment? getting your knowledge from a Christian perspective. How did you embrace that? How did you see it?
So I would say I wouldn't give myself too much credit. I would give two groups credit. First of all, my parents. My parents were not highly educated. At the time I was growing up, neither of my parents had even been to high school, but they believed in education and they surrounded all of their children with books. We didn't have much of the world's possessions, but the house had a lot of books. And both of my parents were avid readers and avid speakers. They are better speakers than me. Both my mother and my father were. You know, so I grew up in that intellectually stimulating environment, even if they didn't have much higher education themselves. And they believed in education. They didn't pressure us to do well. They just lived with an expectation. It was like an expectation that you were going to do well, and they didn't have to pressure you. Just knew you needed to do well. So that began, and they were devoted Christians. So we started out, all of my siblings, we all went to the Castries Seventh-day Adventist School. Now, if you look at quality school and education, you wouldn't pick the Castries SDS primary school that we went to. Why do I say that? The school didn't even have a school. The school met in the church sanctuary. On Friday afternoon, we'd pick up all the desks before we leave and stack them on one side of the church and stack them on the other side of the church. And the benches that we used in the week were the pews for Sabbath. Monday morning, we did the reverse. Unstack the desks and then line them up in classrooms, put blackboards to divide the classroom. So it wasn't a high-tech environment, but I had teachers who cared and teachers who did their best to teach us. And so that's it. The second miracle is I attended the St. Lucia SD Academy. At the time I was growing up in St. Lucia, this is in the early the 1960s. At that time, there were two high schools in the entire nation of St. Lucia. That was St. Joseph's Convent and St. Mary's College. And to go to them, you had to sit an entrance exam. The entrance exam was always held on Saturdays. No questions asked. So if you wanted to go to high school in St. Lucia, then later on the government started a secondary school in T4. But early in the 60s, that was it. You had to take the exam on Sabbath. So there was really no option for Seventh-day Adventists who wanted to honor the Sabbath to go to high school. And under the leadership of Pastor McCullough, who was one pastor, he was the one pastor for the entire island of St. Lucia at one point, he's had a vision of starting a Seventh-day Adventist high school, sold it to every church. Every church had a goal of how much money they were to raise, and every week you would see the progress being made toward raising money to get a school. They heard about an old guest house that was up for sale. We were part of the East Caribbean Conference and told the conference, there's this building we want to buy to start a high school. The conference was excited about the opportunity, but they said they didn't have no money. And do you know what happened? 8 families mortgaged their homes and their lands to get the money for a loan to buy that guest house. And that guest house was converted into a high school. And that was the start of the St. Lucia SD Academy. So when I even think of my opportunities that I've had, I think of the sacrifice and the commitment of people who were farmers and laborers and so on. But the idea of creating a new vision for their children, a new opportunity for their children, motivated them. And I am a beneficiary of that sacrifice.
But why did they think that was necessary to take you all through those struggles when we already have had these government schools existing? Why was it necessary to have a school, a Christian school?
But I'll tell you, there was need. The St. Lucia SD Academy, one of the prime ministers of St. Lucia, one of the recent prime ministers of St. Lucia, who's not a Seventh-day Adventist, is an alumnus of that school. Because the school not only created an opportunity for Seventh-day Adventists, it created an opportunity for the nation. There was a shortage with the entire country when we started. There was 2, and then shortly the government opened a school in the south in Beaufort. There was a 3rd secondary school. There was such a demand from parents of all religious backgrounds and so on to get a place where the kids went to school. So when the St. Lucia as the Academy started, and when I went to it, the majority of students were not Adventists. They were just people and parents and students who wanted an opportunity to get a high school education. And I think it was that chance to learn and to prepare yourself to be more productive and more successful in life was the opportunity that everyone seized.
When you came to the University of Southern Caribbean, formerly Caribbean Union College, you were an adult with children, or you were still struggling day by day to get through?
I was 18 years old. I was 18 years old when I came to USC. And I would honestly say, I came to USC and I studied theology. I had no vision of what I wanted to do. In fact, coming to USC and studying theology did not even make sense to me. That's the truth. Except that I was convicted that that is what God wanted me to do. I had given my life to the Lord. People would not remember this, but Pastor Harold Lee was an Black American who worked in the Caribbean Union as a stewardship director. And he conducted a series of stewardship series in my home church in Castries, St. Lucia. And he gave me a vision of having a relationship with God. I grew up in the church and knew the Bible and stuff like that. But that vision of a personal relationship with God that I hadn't experienced before. And when I committed my life to God, I was deeply impressed that God wanted me to go to CUC to study theology. It was not on my agenda. It was not something I wanted to do. It did not make sense to me. In fact, I first thought that God was just doing what he did to Abraham. You know, when he told Abraham, offer the son Isaac, he just wanted to see if he was willing to do it, but he really didn't want him to kill his son, you know, but he wanted to see, was he willing? And I really thought God just asking me to do this. I was convicted that was what I needed to do. But it didn't make sense. I did not have a desire to be a pastor. I really didn't. But I was convicted that this is what God wanted me to do. So that's why I came. I came young with an open mind, trying to follow what I thought God was asking me to do.
And then you move into MDiv. So you're still in the trenches.
Yes, because I would say I moved into an MDiv, and this is one benefit of Christian education. Is the wisdom that you get from Christian people within your social network and Christian faculty. There are 2 faculty in particular that were responsible for me going on to higher education. I had no plans to do anything more than a bachelor's degree when I came to USC. But he's now a doctor, but at the time, Peter Van Bemmelen was a professor at the university. Yeah. He pulled me aside. He said, you have brilliant abilities, and you need to plan to go on to higher education so you can come back and be a faculty at USC. That was his vision. And he planted that idea in my mind. Now, I barely had money to go to school in Trinidad. Did not have any money to go to school in the United States. So the thought of going to school in the United States was not something that was a viable option for me, thinking of my human resources. And that's where Pastor K.S. Wiggins came in. He taught me, and he, more than anybody else, he also was a speaker at late in my high school experience at the week of prayer at a high school I attended in St. Lucia, and he had done a crusade at the Castries Church, was my home church. So I knew him, and he inspired me with faith. He taught me that if God asks you to do something, it's your duty to do it. And it's God's problem to do whatever. So he would say, for example, if God asks you to jump through the hole in the wall, you look at the wall, you don't see a hole. It's your duty to jump. It's God's problem to make the hole. And if you trust God, he'll make the hole. But he really changed my mind to think that all things are possible. What I need in life is to find out, what does God want me to do? And to realize that if God wants me to do something, he will open the doors.
Oh, all right. Dr. Williams, you move into sociology, and this is my bag, and this is what I study, and this is what excites me. But you move into sociology. What would have caused a goodly Christian pastor to decide that he wants to do sociology?
So let me continue. So I did my Master of Divinity. While I was doing my Master of Divinity, I took a course in the Ministry of Healing. It was the title of the course. And I was impressed with both the counsel, the wisdom of the power that was possible. And I was a child of the civil rights movement. If you ask me growing up, who were my heroes, I would tell you Martin Luther King was one of my heroes. I would tell you John F. Kennedy was one of my heroes. These were, we monitored what was happening in terms of rights of individuals. And I was so impressed with the Ministry of Healing course I took at a seminary that I needed to train myself so that I could use health to make a difference at a community level. And so I graduated from Andrews University with a Master of Divinity degree. And in the next semester, I enrolled at Loma Linda University to do a Master's in Public Health, thinking that we could be using the church as an avenue to reach the community, to meet human needs, to address human suffering. So that was my motivation. And when I finished Loma Linda, I went to work at the Battle Creek Adventist Hospital, which was the first Seventh-day Adventist hospital ever created in the United States, in the world. It was the Battle Creek Sanitarium Hospital in the late 19th century. I worked there as a health educator in charge of reaching out to the community, doing health in the community. And it was in that experience of working with the community, I felt that I knew the health facts, but I really didn't understand the challenges communities face. I really was not equipped to effectively minister to the community and really reach the community. And that impressed me that I needed to benefit from the insights of the social sciences so that I could understand where people was coming from, so that I could understand how I could be effective in serving them and in making a difference in their life. So that was the path that led me to study sociology.
And what was the part that led you to be so brilliant at it?
I don't have an answer to that, except that I am impressed. You know, there's a book called Desire of Ages that you know, and it says that Jesus sought to do his best work in everything he was asked to do. And he was as perfect a workman when he was working at a carpenter's bench as he was perfect in character. And that has inspired me that I need to bring my A game when it comes to doing God's work, when it comes to even my life. I need to, if I am giving God my life, I have to give him everything, and I need to seek to do my best at everything. So I give him the glory for the results. I just try to do my best with what he has given me.
But I guess folks would have said to you at certain time, Dr. Williams, your writing in the social sciences pretty insightful, and it broadens their perspective. I guess people have said that to you many times, so I guess so. If they have not, but I'm telling you this morning. So what would you account for Dr. Williams taking this clay? And I can only make a vase with it, but Dr. Williams seemed to be able to make a cell phone with the same clay that I can only make a cup with. What accounts for these things?
I mean, I would say two things. You know, I've talked about two specific professors who made a difference in my life. I can talk about in high school. In my early years, Forms 1, 2, and 3, I struggled with mathematics. Mathematics was hard for me. And then in Form 4 and 5, a man by the name of Francis Mason taught me mathematics. And he made math simple. It was like all these concepts and things I couldn't understand before. When Mr. Mason was finished explaining it, it was a piece of cake. And so I would point to good teachers who motivate you and who make a difference and who help you to understand things that certainly played a role in my development. And so I think, but the notion I talked about faith and Pastor Wiggins, it's also the belief that you are a child of God. And God has created us for success, higher than the highest human thoughts can reach is God's idea for his children. Those were thoughts I grew up with. And for me, it's not about me. It's about me being faithful to God and let the chips fall where they may. I will do my best. God gets the credit because, some of my students come to me all the time, doctoral students, and, and they admire the success I have had, and they want to know what's the plan, like what's the strategy, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a strategy other than taking advantage of opportunity and following those doors that God opened. And along my life, in many ways, there are key moments, and if we have time, I could talk about some specific ones, where I think, looking back, were providential and were even, you could say, career-changing, but it came from, someone would say, a chance encounter. I would say a providential encounter. Is God designs these moments of destiny where you get advice, and if you take it, it changes the trajectory of your life.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Before I open the lines for those who want to call us, I want to ask Dr. Wilson a couple questions.
He's right here with me. He can answer.
He's of age. He's Dr. Wilson, what do you believe is University of Southern Caribbean most important contribution to the Caribbean? I wanted to ask you this a while now. What do you think is most important contribution to the Caribbean?
Well, thank you again, Pastor Brown. And as an alumnus, you know that we focus on a certain kind of education. In the Caribbean, we have lots of really good schools. We have great schools around us in Trinidad and Tobago, and a lot of our students who attend those schools do very well. The University of the Southern Caribbean comes at education from a values-based perspective, and so we not only think of
what you mean by that? What do you mean by a values-based perspective?
I was going to explain.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
We don't think of the student doing a set of classes, completing a degree, as the totality of what we offer. What we offer includes much more than that. So we think of the student not during the 4 years that the student is here, but 40 years down the road. Some of our students, a few of our students finish in 3 years. We think of them 30 years down the road. And what we instill in them is a certain way of life and living that transform them outside of the content of a subject area. Mm-hmm. So we get to their heart, we get to their motivations for living, we get to the way they see themselves and live their lives. We believe that those values that we hold dear, compassion, love, benevolence, kindness, those values are so essential to them being successful in the workplace, being successful in their relationship with each other, with their relationship with their family members, how they relate to the community, how they relate to work itself when they leave USC. And so we find a lot of our graduates, one of our former presidents coined this term, the Yushan man and the Yushan woman, where we evaluate the values that we seek to instill, not only in the curricular area of their experience, but in the co-curricular aspects of their lives. And what we find is that our students are prepared a little differently for the world of work and for the world of life. So that's what I mean by values education.
Okay.
Can I just add to what Dr. Wilson said?
Sure.
And I completely agree with what he said, but let me just give you another spin on it. You can get knowledge, you can get the facts from any university. You can get the basic curriculum training from any university. What you get with Christian education is not just knowledge, you get wisdom. And wisdom comes from God. And that gives you a sense and success in life. I know many brilliant people whose lives are falling apart. Success in life is not just having the knowledge, but having the wisdom to apply that knowledge and having the wisdom of how you lead your life in a way that invests in other people and makes a difference in the world. And that's what Christian education offers.
Okay.
Pastor Brown, we have someone actually online now.
Okay then.
Hi, you're on Talk City.
A very pleasant good morning to Pastor Terence Brown and your most esteemed guests in the persons of Dr. Colwick Wilson of the University of the Southern Caribbean, and of course, Dr. David R. Williams of Harvard. We welcome guys to the, I'm very happy to be on the program today, and I must compliment you, Pastor Brown, for your guests of eminence that you bring from time to time. Today, I want to observe something and ask a quick question. One, I observed that the two guests and your good self, Pastor Brown, have been alumni of the University of the Southern Caribbean. Your first degrees are in theology, and you have veered off into sociology. I would like to know what is the relationship between sociology or theology and sociology in respect of the development of Christian education. And secondly, quickly, I would like to know that in this postmodern era, where rationalization is the order of the day, relativism is the order of the day, how do you reconcile aspiration of values as opposed to one honing one's skills? For example, one scholar said to me once, I rather a very crooked, skilled doctor operate on me than a doctor with values that is mediocre. How do you reconcile these variables so that we can have a sense of what is best for us going forward?
Let me just say a couple things and then let Dr. Wilson join in as well. It's a point I made earlier. I think that part of my being a Christian and being faithful to God is to do the best. I talked about Jesus as a carpenter. If I lived in Nazareth, there's nobody I would want to make a table or bench or bed or dresser or whatever I needed than Jesus, because he sought everything that he did. He was doing it for his Father, and he did his best at everything. And I think a Christian should not be mediocre in anything. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. That's kind of the grounding I got and trained as a Christian, that I do my best at everything that I have. So you have to be your best. The issue of how do you reconcile the theories that often are not religion based, not religion focused. I think I go back to God is the scientist, great social scientist, great physical scientist, great natural scientist, and there are gems of truth that lie in every area of science. And the challenge for the Christian is to look at them and reset them in the framework of the gospel, reset them in a way that will make a difference in the lives of people, make a difference for the quality of our lives. And I would say, where does sociology and theology fit together? Sociology helps us understand the society, helps us understand the challenges, helps us understand the larger social influences of people. God has placed us here to make a difference in the lives of people, and understanding insights from sociology can help us to work more effectively to lift up people, to give them a vision, to create opportunities, and to address some of the social problems that they face.
Okay. Karen, do you have anybody else before I ask Dr. Wilson to come in? Karen? Okay, Dr. Wilson, go ahead. I'm not hearing Karen.
Yeah, I appreciate the point the caller made. And so I think in the example he cited towards the end there, he had two options. One option where you have a skilled surgeon and the other option where you have a values-based surgeon who is not so skilled. So what we seek to do, and have accomplished in many ways and many instances, is to bring those two things together. And Dr. Williams did make that point. But so what we would say, we will have a skilled doctor who has the wisdom of God, the values that will make him not just a surgeon, but a compassionate surgeon, a caring surgeon, a surgeon who would just go beyond the moment of the surgery itself and care about that person in a holistic way. That's the kind of education that we provide. And from that perspective, we have the best of both worlds. And so we strive to go beyond excellence in what we offer so that the content, the knowledge is not inconsistent with what is out there in that scientific area of study or inquiry. So we are excited about that combination. And we think that combination came from God himself. It's not a combination that we develop. It's a combination that God has given to us, a mandate that we hold strong to and seek to implement to effect and make changes in the lives of students, men and women who come by our university.
Dr. Brown, I have to interrupt for 1 second.
Yes, go ahead.
You heard that answer Dr. Wilson gave? That's why I'm excited that he is the president of my alma mater, University of the Southern Caribbean, because I believe in this school, I believe in its future, and I think the vision that he brings, that answer so eloquently gives us, is why I'm excited about Christian education. And people out there of any faith, of no faith, this is a place to come that will make a difference, a life-changing difference in your life.
Well, listen, I've been saying this all the time, that the problem in governments and things like that, that we do not have Christian sociologists operating in cabinets and things like that. Folks who can truly understand the society and put God into play. But if I say that too much, folks will, and you have to say, no, don't say that now. I am Dr. Wilson, because I see we are around the time. Karen, we have any callers yet? Okay.
I have one right now.
Okay. Nobody, okay.
Good morning, Pastor Brown.
Good morning, my God.
Esteemed scholars.
Yeah.
I knew when I started listening to you that there was a connection. I too did sociology, but my alma mater is St. Augustine.
Okay.
And I always admire your perspective, and I know you were coming from a sociological perspective, and where we are able to marry the two, theology with sociology, understanding the society and so on. And I'm always intrigued, by your contribution.
Thank you very much.
We'll bring on the scholars.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing is that sociology, opens up the door. And as you all said, in my father's house, there are many mansions, right? Many rooms, and so there's room for everybody. So it's able to marry the two, sociology and theology, and not lose the Christian focus, although you are a sociologist or from a sociological perspective. So I too, and I'm saying what it is that draws me to Pastor Brown, because of sociology, not because and he is able to bring in the Christian perspective, which overrides all of that. So I want to thank you, gentlemen. I am intrigued, and my family and I, we are listening intently. So thank you so much.
Okay, you have a blessed day. Before we are out of time quickly, so I want to ask Dr. Wilson this last question there. How many students and degree programs you have at USC, and how many countries in the Caribbean USC is serving?
So around the world, we serve over 40 different countries in the
around
Caribbean.
Around the world, you said it. I said Caribbean, you said world.
Yeah, I'm coming to the Caribbean now. So we have over 24 countries in the Caribbean that are connected to the regional school, to our school, but we have other students from other Caribbean territory. So we have about 30 Caribbean countries, including South America, and Latin America who attend here, but we have students from over 40 countries.
You got less than a minute, Doc, because we are right of time. I think Karen might give us a minute and a half, so to can be came in a bit late, but that's okay, Karen. You take a minute and a half again.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Okay, Doc, go ahead.
So in terms of the number of students, last school year, we had 3,123 students, unique students across the 3 semesters. So on average, we are about 3,000 students. The number of programs, we also have 40 different disciplines. We have a number of schools, a School of Science and Technology. We have, which includes nursing, which is our largest program on the campus. We have the School of Business and Entrepreneurship. We have a religion school, as you'll expect, School of Theology and Religion. We have the School of Education and Humanities. And you know, all together, along with the School of Graduate Studies, where we have 9 programs, 9 graduate programs for the offering. And we have about 6 fully online degrees that we offer to the community and to the world, actually, these online programs. So those are some of the areas that we cover currently. I know we run out of time. Yeah. So you got to invite me back. When we must do that.
Before you go, and before I ask Dr. Williams to wind up, I want you to tell me something about Dr. Williams that you know.
Something about Dr. Williams?
Yeah. If he's displeased already that you're on my program, you say what you want.
Well, you know, I was so excited that Dr. Williams was able to join us, because I think the things that we're talking about, we see clearly in the life and in the work of Dr. Williams. He is not only one of the most brilliant minds, scientific minds, not according to me, but those who know and study these things. He is not only one of the scholars in the world that people often cite. They respect his work and they use his work as to enhance the body of knowledge that is being created every day. But I think at the heart of who he is a man who these same values that I talked about find themselves demonstrating even as he matures in his career. There's no deviation. There's a commitment to these values. They are the foundation of how he lives his life. Okay. And when I interact with him, I experience more of what I read in the Bible about Jesus. So that's what I would say about this man of God.
Okay, Dr. Williams, just 30 seconds to close off the morning.
I would say to any young person listening, I am a poor boy growing up on a small Caribbean island, and I have traveled the world, and I'm the most cited Black social scientist in the world. How is that possible? Give your dreams to God, and God will do for you exceeding abundantly above what you can ask or think. Just ask God, what do you want me to do with my life? And follow his guidance. He will not lead you wrong.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And for those who have been listening to us this morning, wherever you are, what part of the world you are in, I want to say thank you. I pray that this morning we have brought some benefit to your life. And may the good Lord continue to bless you. Until next week, Karen, may the God bless you and your family. And thank you so much for being our producer this morning. And until next week, bye-bye, everybody.